I want to talk first just about why she's here and why she's a perfect choice for us. A couple of things, first of all, she's basketball royalty in the state of Indiana. Let's just start there.
What's up, Fever Nation? You just heard Kelly Crosskop in Stephanie White's opening day presser when she was hired as a Fever head coach. And she said, first rattle out of the box, why they bringing Stephanie White back to the Indiana Fever. Now, these two have a relationship, and I don't mean that kind of relationship. I'm just saying they had a prior relationship back in 2012 with the Indiana Fever. So you have some familiarity there. It would have been better if she would have just led with that. But telling the Fever Nation, this is a different Fever Nation than 2012. People wasn't even watching the W like they watching it now. You didn't even have the fan base that you have now. Never has one player brought more eyes to the game than Caitlin Clark. And this is how they introduced Stephanie White to the team. They're talking about Stephanie White as if she has won a title somewhere.
First of all, she's basketball royalty in the state of Indiana. Let's just start there.
Yeah, at different points, you think back and you're like, man, that was pretty cool. It was pretty cool that I got to win a national championship in my home state, that I got to be a part of a WNBA championship in my home state, play professionally in my home state, and then be the head coach of my home franchise. That was really pretty cool.
Fever Nation, I got a serious question for you. When Tamika Catchings and the Indiana Fever won the title in 2012, what happened in 2013? What happened in 2014? Because in 2015, they hired Stephanie White as head coach. And then in 2016, after the season, I'm hoping, they let her go. And that's when she made her way to Vandy. But the Vandy players said she had one foot in the door at Indiana Fever and the other foot in the door at Vandy. They weren't sure she was locked in at Vandy. They said she was sometimes there and sometimes not. That's why when I hear Stephanie White in interviews talking about being locked in, being all the way in, doing what you have to do, I'm like, Stephanie, who are you talking about? You're talking about that's who you are. You have to be what you're trying to coach, Stephanie. You got to be authentic with players, Stephanie. If you haven't lived your life like this, how can you expect it from the players? Are you serious? Are you having an out-of-body experience, Stephanie, where you imagine you were all in at Vandy? Imagine what you could have done at Vandy, Stephanie, if you were all in. This was an opportunity. Vandy was an opportunity for you to step out of the state of Indiana and do something on your own. They gave you 5 seasons, Stephanie, to get it right. 5 seasons. That's enough to bring in your own recruiting class and see them through to their senior year if they play every year without a medical red shirt or a COVID year. 5 years, Stephanie. That's bringing in your freshman class and watching them grow and mature and develop to fruition to possibly make the tournament. And you didn't even do that not once, Stephanie. Now you back at the Indiana Fever again based on relationships only. Let's just be real. Based on relationships only. That's what she said in your opening presser when they hired you. You were being hired because you were basketball royalty in the state of Indiana. They didn't say anything about your coaching ability. Now, they said you coached at a high level. You've been in high pressure games. But, Stephanie, you never closed the deal. You never closed the deal. So can you leave players to close the deal? They say typically some of your best players don't make you great coaches. It's the players that were mid and average. They make the better coaches. John Wooden said the reason why great players don't make great coaches because those players don't know what made them great.
First of all, she's basketball royalty in the state of Indiana. Let's just start there.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, everybody wants to win championships. Like that's the competitive spirit is part of why we do what we do. And you got to put it out there. Like, right? You got to put it out there. You got to talk about it. But at the same time, I think for us, understanding that doesn't happen now. Right. It started in the off season. Once we get our team together, it starts with every day we prepare, putting ourselves in position to win. And look, again, I've been around long enough to know that everything kind of has to align, right? Everything has to align. But the things that we can control, we've got to control every day. We can't look ahead. We got to be where our feet are. We've got to stay focused on continuing to grow, continuing to improve, stacking our days. We got to keep the main thing the main thing. There's a lot of noise out there, and just talking about it doesn't mean that we're going to be about it, right? So we've got to prove that every day that we step on the floor. And I love this group, the competitive spirit. I love that this group is not afraid to talk about what we want to accomplish. And now we've just got to continue to grind and put ourselves in position for that.
Fever Nation, I did a video a couple of days ago. Remember, I told you that they had handed over the keys. Now, Caitlin is not a very outspoken person on all occasions. Sometimes she says what she has to say, just like when she said she's going to be the primary ball handler, and that's not going to change. That's not going to change. So do we have warring factions in the background? I want to show you another player that also wears a sleeve. And you tell me, is Caitlin speaking cryptically? And if she is, leave a comment what she may be saying.
First of all, she's basketball royalty in the state of Indiana. Let's just start there.
After the logbook.
Damn it, Kathy!
Consider yourself in contempt.
Colonel Jessup, did you order the code red?
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Caitlin Clark wearing a leg sleeve, coincidence or injury? Caitlin Clark took a hard fall recently, and now she's showing up with a leg sleeve. Coach Stephanie White says it's just fashion, but fans aren't buying it. We've never seen her wear one before. Could it be swelling? A minor injury? Something they're not fully revealing? It might not be serious, but it's definitely something to watch closely, because if Clark isn't 100%, that changes everything. Do you think something is being hidden?
Fever Nation, I want you to listen to the question Stephanie White is asked about Damiris Dantas, and I want you to hear this answer. It will blow your mind.
My question is for the coach to hear how you see Damiris Dantas' role with the team this year.
Yeah, I think Didi's a player that we can count on to knock down shots. When we need a stretch big out there, she's going to have an opportunity to be out on the floor. She had a tremendous offseason. She's healthy. She's in great shape, and she's been impressive thus far in camp.
Stephanie, they asked you about Damiris Dantas. Damiris Dantas, the player who did absolutely nothing in the playoffs down the stretch against the Aces. She was totally ineffective. Now, you can blame Rust. Let's go with Rust back with that first game against Dallas when she returned. Let's put it on Rust. Let's just throw Rust out there. Now, why she couldn't get a visa to come back at the beginning of practice of the camp, you all signed this girl as if she was a critical piece to the puzzle. You all signed her like she brought something to the table. Yes, Damiris Dantas is a good player only when she's hitting threes. If she's not hitting threes, you recognize she's not playing defense. When she's hitting threes, you can live with her giving up points on the other end of the floor. But listen how Stephanie talks about Damiris Dantas in such glowing terms, when we all know that was not the last picture in our mind at the end of the season in that last game against the Aces. Fever Nation, I want you to ask yourself this. How could this team look so good against the New York Liberty? How could they look so good against the New York Liberty without Damiris Dantas, and then come back against Dallas and look so terrible? I hope this isn't a microcosm of how the season is going to go. I surely hope this isn't a microcosm. You can't play that well against one of the top tier teams in the league and then tank against the worst.
First of all, she's basketball royalty in the state of Indiana. Let's just start there.